Greetings, vinyl community. It's been quite a while since I did a vinyl update, so this will just be some of the most recent vinyl finds. And I've got a little display of my own LPs, my own vinyl, and I'm working on a new album. I'd really like to put it out as a vinyl release, but I just can't keep filling this apartment up with boxes of my own records that don't sell. So I'm really hoping that some of these can move out the door and make a little room for something new. Make of that information what you will. So on to vinyl finds. Start off with the newest, and that is Frank Zappa and the Mothers, Rainbow Theater, December 10th, 1971. This is a 3 LP set of the final gig from the Mothers' 1971 tour. This is the band with Flo and Eddie as the front men. And this was a very ill-fated gig because it's the show at the Rainbow Theater where a deranged audience member got on the stage and pushed Frank Zappa off into the orchestra pit, rendering him severely injured and leaving him hospitalized for a protracted period and in a wheelchair for most of the rest of the year after that. So, not one that Frank had fond memories of. And you can actually hear that incident on this recording. At the very end, after the encore, during which Flo and Eddie perform a straight version of I Want to Hold Your Hand, there's audience applause and suddenly a big clattering noise. Some unintelligible, there's something that I can't make out, I think Mark Volman exclaims, and the audience abruptly stops applauding. And that's how this album ends. So, very historic and kind of disturbing moment. This is a Various Artists album that I think they imported a lot of copies of this in the 70s. For a while you could find this at cutout prices because they'd kind of flooded the market. And the draw to this was mainly a lengthy, otherwise unreleased performance by Yes, their 10.5-minute version of Simon & Garfunkel's America, which at the time was not available anywhere else, and also the rare B-side by Led Zeppelin, Hey Hey What Can I Do? This is, although it's a continuous picture, it's not a gatefold album, strangely enough, so you get this distinctly phallic dragster without being able to erect it, so to speak. And this is a copy from the warehouse that was priced at the full $4.96, outrageous in those days. But it's a great compilation. It's got Loudon Wainwright Third, Motel Blues, wonderful song. Dr. John, Where Ya At Mule, classic Bluebird by Buffalo Springfield, Delaney and Bonnie, Only You Know and I Know, and Sam Stone by John Prine, and other tracks, Jay Giles Band, Cactus, Gordon Haskell, the guy who was very briefly in King Crimson, doing something very not King Crimson-ish, and finally that epic performance by Yes. This is one I'd been looking for quite some time. New American Music, Volume 4, Avant-garde Classical Pieces. And the main attraction for me was the piece Cybersonic Cantilevers by Gordon Mumma, a piece in which audience members can contribute, bringing their own sounds or found sounds or pre-recorded cassettes, which they could stick into an installation and have that be used as raw sound material that would be electronically manipulated by the system that Gordon Mumma had devised. And on this recording, you can hear that somebody has supplied Emerson, Lake and Palmer's Tarkus because bits of Tarkus keep coming through, sometimes just distorted, but you can hear that very distinctive 5/4 rhythm that keeps coming through in Tarkus. And it's great because how often would you hear some classic prog rock randomly appearing in the middle of this avant-garde electronic piece? So as I say, I'd been looking for this for some time, ran into a copy at a shop in San Francisco at Groove Merchant. And it was nicely priced, kind of a beat up cover. Took it home, repaired it as best I could, and was really happy to have found it. Then a month later, I found a still sealed perfect copy at Grooves. And so I now have 2 copies. So one of them I'll have to pass on to somebody, some unsuspecting victim. But there you go. There was a record show not long ago at KUSF. Haven't had one of those in a while. And this is only the second one, I think. Is it even the second one since the pandemic? So I definitely made my way. Yeah, it's the second one. Made my way and found several items there, including this great prog band from Portugal, Tantra, and their album Holocausto. It's a gatefold, distinctly kind of stereotype prog rock cover art. Not quite Roger Dean, but definitely in that wheelhouse. And, you know, if you're into, yes, King Crimson, Emerson, Lake and Palmer, this is right in that field. Great prog album. More nice prog from Europe, from Holland, Holderlin. Are they Dutch or German? They're Dutch, I think. Traumstadt double live album on the Spiegelei label with their old fried egg logo. Nice classic prog with viola as the sort of unusual instrument contributing to their sound. And there they all are. Distinctly not prog, Do It Yourself by Ian Dury. Apparently this album was released with dozens of different cover designs. These are all wallpaper designs from a particular decorator company. And I guess if you really were an Ian Dury fanatic, you would have to collect the dozens of different versions. But there's the one I got. It's a wonderful album. It includes This Is What We Find, Dance of the Screamers, Lullaby for Francis, In-Betweenies, terrific funky backing, and Ian Dury's amazing wordplay and absolutely irresistible delivery. So, love that album. Also from the record show, Sonny Stitt. Stitt plays Bird, as it implies. It's Charlie Parker compositions. And I'm actually trying to collect the Atlantic releases that have these kind of melty face oil painting portraits on the covers. There are, to the best of my knowledge, 4 of them. They were all released back to back with consecutive Atlantic catalog numbers. Another one is the John Coltrane album, Coltrane's Sound. And there's a Mingus one and there's a Milt Jackson one. And I'm looking out for those. And finally, from the same person I bought that and the Ian Dury from, Weather Report, Sweet Nighter, particular favorite of mine because it opens with Boogie Woogie Waltz, which is, I think, the first Weather Report I ever heard when they performed it on the ABC In Concert show on TV. And this is actually an upgrade copy. I already had this album, but that copy played with a bit of surface noise, so this one is a nice upgrade. Another unsuspecting victim, I guess I'll have to pass on the other copy. Just recently from my local shop, I found a really nice copy of Clouds by Joni Mitchell. This is my favorite of her early albums. Very folky, not with the jazzy elements or rock elements that crept in later. This is very acoustic sounding, very intimate lyrically, a lot of poetic lyrics about Joni's romantic and erotic life, and something that I found very compelling as a young man listening to the female approach to those topics. So, got a couple of records on the great Random Radar label. Digswell Duets by Lol Coxhill. The late Lol Coxhill's soprano saxophone improviser of great note. And on this album, as the title implies, he's doing duets on one side with electronics and on the other side with piano. And this is Random Radar's American release of an album that I believe was released on a different label in Europe. They also got hold of a Henry Cow album that they were able to release on the label. And also from Random Radar, there's some spacey music by Mars Everywhere and their album Industrial Sabotage. Very out there electronic space music, some live performance, great stuff, and thanks to Tom Scott for hooking me up with those. Brand X, great live album, Livestock. We've got Phil Collins still performing with them at this point on drums. And the classic lineup with John Goodsall, Percy Jones, Robin Lumley, Morris Pert, and Kenwood Dennard also playing drums. Sadly, we've lost an awful lot of those people in recent years, so farewell to them, but that is a great, great live album from Brand X. When I first started buying my own records at the end of the 60s, there was a grocery store where I lived, the Menlo Market in San Diego, that had a small rack of records that they stocked. And I still have some of the records that I bought there. Blind Faith and Hurdy-Gurdy Man and The Doors' Strange Days. Those all came from that rack in the Menlo Market. It was kind of odd to have in a small mom-and-pop grocery store like that. One record that I always used to see in the racks that I never bought, and probably with good reason, because it's frankly not that great a record, but I didn't really know what it was going to be like. I'd heard of Mike Bloomfield, but all I knew was that he played with Bob Dylan, and he had that Super Session album out that was very hyped at the time. But this album is just one I used to see, and it had quite a cover. Just ran into a copy of this for an inexpensive price, so I just sort of picked it up. And as I say, it's nothing terrific. In particular, Mike Bloomfield's vocals are weak. He's got Nick Gravenites on here, who should have been awarded the lead vocal slot because he's a far superior singer. And not enough of Mike Bloomfield showing off his guitar chops, but it's listenable. It's nice enough. Nothing special. Here and Now, some space music from Britain. These guys played behind David Allen as Planet Gong after David Allen had split from the actual Gong band. The album is Give and Take. And I actually thought that this album itself had some David Allen involvement, but no, it's just the Here and Now band itself. And it's still got that kind of punk-informed approach to space music that you would get with the Planet Gong album, the Floating Anarchy approach. So it's still a very enjoyable listen. Strangelands by The Crazy World of Arthur Brown, or at least credited to The Crazy World of Arthur Brown, as this does not feature the central instrumental sound of the original Crazy World of Arthur Brown. This is an archival release that came out decades after the classic 1968 Crazy World of Arthur Brown album. This does not have Vincent Crane on organ, but it does have the amazing vocals of Arthur Brown himself. It does not have the psychedelic, proto-prog, operatic, classical rock approach that the original album had. This is very experimental, jammy, and wild, possibly even closer to something like Captain Beefheart than to the sound of the original Crazy World. There's Arthur himself in his fire helmet. And this it ends, unlikely enough, with a reverb-drenched performance of Endless Sleep, the old 50s teen tragedy song by Jody Reynolds. That is an archival album that came out decades after the original Crazy World album. Colosseum, the album Daughter of Time. This is, I think, the first album with Chris Farlow as their lead singer. Dick Hextall-Smith on saxes, John Heisman, of course, on drums, Mark Clark on bass, Dave Clemson on guitar, also Barbara Thompson on saxes and other woodwinds, and Louis Chinamo on bass. Great classic jazz-infused prog rock from Colosseum. And from jazz-infused prog rock to prog-infused punk pop, the Stranglers, The Gospel According to the Men in Black from 1980. 1981? British edition with the gatefold Last Supper parody. This is the version I had back in the day. This is my favorite album by the Stranglers. Great stuff. This is the album that they were touring behind the one time I got to see them live, and the story I always tell about that gig, seeing the Stranglers live, was that at one point Jean-Jacques Brunel was being somehow irritated by a person at the foot of the stage who was taking photographs of the band. And at the end of one song, he pointed at the guy, dropped his bass to the stage, clang, jumped off the stage, chased the guy out of the club, tackled him in the parking lot, and took the film out of his camera. And then just nonchalantly returned to the club. Did you get him? Of course. And the concert proceeded. In the interim, the other band members had just been sort of milling around the stage, not saying anything, not making eye contact. It was an unusual little incident for a concert, and definitely had that punky spirit. Finally, John Renborn Group, The Enchanted Garden. Just found this at my local shop. This is John Renborn, of course, from Pentangle, along with Jackie McShee on vocals. So you've got a bit of a mini Pentangle there, with Tony Roberts on flute and recorder, and John Molyneux on dulcimer and mandolin, and Keshav Sathe on tablas and percussion, Glenn Tommy on snare drum. Very much in the medieval folk vein that you might expect from Renborn's side of Pentangle, without the jazzy Pentangle sound so much, but with the Eastern influence of the Indian drumming. So there you go. Those are most recent vinyl finds. Thank you very much for watching. Be well. I will talk with you again soon. Bye-bye for now. Buy the records.